Well, I've been thinking about the idea for probably 2 years before I wrote the story. When Jimmy was incarcerated back in 2007, I'd always wanted to do a story, but I knew that him being inside and visitation being strict, and with the trial going on, and everything like that, I knew it was probably not possible. And so when he was released in July, I knew right there that I was going to do a story on it. And I started in August and didn't publish it till February, so it was a pretty long process. But I've always had the idea to write about him. It just didn't materialize until this past February. So Jimmy's never really been written about, other than in sports gamers or whatnot. I've written 2 columns about him in the past 3 years, and that's the only feature writing that's ever been done on him. And so, we never heard from him after he was incarcerated. We never heard from him during the trial. And so that was one of the really appealing things, was to give him a voice. And so there was really no source I could go to online or in an archive anywhere to get into his past. It all had to be original. And so that was another challenging part, but it's definitely his story. And the reporting's pretty original. So I think once you have everything down, that's when you can really go back and review your notes and start to put your story together and see what's compelling, what's not. And that's a tough thing to do, because you want to tell the stories as thoroughly as possible, but it's also your story. You're telling it from your perspective. And I think that's what narrative nonfiction is all about. The writer has to emphasize what's important to them, and all the while accomplishing truth and fact and accuracy. So, well, this is probably only my second or third time where I've tried to do a long form narrative, so I'm still pretty fresh with it. I go with an outline to begin with, and I try to write in sections. And so for this story, I tried to make each section its own story, and then put them all together and try to figure out an organization for the story, and they all have to complement each other. But I'd say that the first time I sat down to write it, when you do sections, they don't all necessarily feed off of each other, and so I think you need to establish a certain flow with the story throughout the editing process. But having the opportunity to write a story like Jimmy Wilson's doesn't come along that often, and so I felt really fortunate that I could tell his story, and that it really relatively had been untouched. And so the morning it came out, I felt very proud of the end product, and I felt very fortunate that he opened up to me, and that I told his story. I think this was the biggest challenge that I ever took on as a journalist, and so I really tried to take it all in and absorb as much of the experience as I could, because I knew it was really important to me and to my career to do well with it. I really learned about my resiliency and being able to take on a long-term project and be emotional about it, but not be too emotional about it. And so, yeah, it's all about experience, and you pick up things, you learn how you do things, and it makes you better. My name is Roman Stubbs, and I am the author of Gladiator School.